So as a result, traditions evolve over time.
Yeah.
So if I wanted to become awake, I probably wouldn't go to a bar and fall off of a bar stool. I would probably seek a teacher, such as yourself, or someone in a tradition, as you did, in a long-standing tradition. Zen Buddhism wasn't designed, yesterday.
No.
Right. So there's some security in knowing that you're signing up with a tradition that has a track record.
Well, there's the beginning of the problem right
success.
there. That's the beginning of the delusion right there.
Do you recommend self-inquiry as the fastest approach to awakening?
Well, it's really hard for me to answer a question like that, because the first thing that I ask somebody is, what do you really want? What are you doing here? Why are you doing whatever you're doing? In other words, which direction do you want to go? Most people that come to me, since the only thing I really talk about is enlightenment, even if I'm not using that word, but since that's really the only thing I'm talking about, if somebody finds that they actually are interested in that, for 9 out of 10 people, it's going to entail a radical change of direction. Because most of the people who are on a path to enlightenment are not actually on a path to enlightenment at all.
What are they on?
They're on a path to some sort of spiritual experience.
And how do you define spiritual experience? Some flashy...
Any experience you can have.
Pie in the sky, kind of?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say pie in the sky in the sense of being judgmental about it. Like pie in the sky, has a sense of being not as good as something else. But just in the terms of awakening is awakening out of all experience. And this includes, of course, spiritual experiences as well. So, for example, someone could come and say, they can think I'm on the path to enlightenment. And I can talk, okay, what has your path been? Well, I had this, wonderful spiritual awakening 2 years ago or something. And I'll say, well, what was that like? And they'll say, well, I suddenly merged with all things. And I'll say, well, that's a great experience. As far as human experiences go, that's about the top of the heap. Merging with all things is about as pleasant as it's going to get. One of the highest of mystical experiences. But if you're asking me, if that's what enlightenment's all about, or if you're giving that to me as proof of what enlightenment's all about, I'm sorry I have to inform you, but that's not what it's about. Now, I'm rarely that direct with somebody. Sometimes I actually am that direct, but see, enlightenment really is, initially anyway, is really not about that quality of experience. It's not even about merging with all things. It's about knowing the one and the only truth that's actually happening. That's what it's all about. Knowing what you are. And it's the one truth.
And you're saying that the people who say that they have merged with all things,
right,
and that they know that they are all things,
well, they usually don't know that. They usually have an experience that they merge with all things, and now they know that through a memory. So, in other words, merging with all things is very different than knowing the oneness. Totally different. To merge, there has to be two. There has to be you and the world or the divine or whatever you merge with. And then there's the experience of becoming one.
But couldn't that just be a limitation of language? Maybe merging with all things could really have been the experience of...
It could be.
Of oneness.
It could be. But I usually know, because if they're chasing around to get that experience back, that tells me that the enlightenment thing hasn't happened yet. Because if it had, they wouldn't be chasing around trying to get that experience back. Right.
But like heroin or any other, good addictive experience,
yes,
we get, isn't it sort of the course of things, or a natural, sort of a trick of nature to get us to get onto the evolutionary, the spiritually evolving bandwagon, by giving us a little candy, or a little, like a carrot on a stick. So we have an experience, we have a vague memory of how great it was, and so we want more of it.
Right.
So,
well, in one sense, we could say there's a candy there, and we could say, if we wanted to, I'm not saying that this is true, but that when we open up to higher states of consciousness or mystical experiences, that opens the mind into a bigger and bigger possibility. It's making the mind pliable, so it can maybe bring in much broader context. In that sense, it can be useful. But there's nothing more highly addictive than a good spiritual experience. You know, it's more addictive than most any drug you'll ever come by. That's why you'll find people sitting on cushions, sitting around trying to get an experience that for most of them is only going to happen once in a blue moon, and yet they're willing to put huge segments of their life in to having that very, very occasional experience come and visit them.
Yeah. You know, in psychological experiments, there's the different kinds of reinforcement techniques can be used to get animals to do things like, you know, peck on a little button for, you know, 1 million repetitions, and then they get one little piece of food. And the statistical evidence shows that intermittent reinforcement is the hardest to extinguish behaviors from. So because if you knew that every 10 times you sat to meditate, for example, you would have a great experience, then you could tire of that more quickly than if every blue moon you had one.
Exactly.
And people will sit on the cushion for 10, 20, 30 years waiting for the next spiritual experience.
You never know when it's going to happen.
Yeah. I want to get back to this question of self-inquiry.
Okay.
From what I understand, your process was more of a deconstructive one, where you very methodically went through all of your belief structure. Your
only
belief
at the very
systems.
end.
Oh, that was only
at the very end.
So,
I would be.
You dodged a little bit when I asked you whether you would recommend self-inquiry as a technique. Is what you're getting to?
What I'm getting
saying
to
that
what do you want?
You don't have a prescription, or
no? I'm saying. Says to me, Adya, I really want the truth, the ultimate reality. I want to know who I am, whatever way they put it. Then I'll say, okay, if that's what you want, then you're going to, in one sense, either you can go straight towards it right now and recognize what you are right now without a process in any way whatsoever. In one sense, it's just turning awareness back onto itself. And so awareness recognizes, oh, this is what I am. I'm this awareness. I'm not Bob. I'm not Adya per se. I'm the awareness of Bob and of Adya. And there's many times when you can just point someone in that direction, and their awareness will look back upon itself, and there'll be a spontaneous realization. It may be small. It may be enormous. It may be very transformative. It may become just another memory, but that's possible too. For most people, even if they have that awakening, my experience with most people, they're going to have to undergo a process of what you're calling a deconstruction process, finding out what's not true, and what's not true, and what's not true, and what's not true, and what's not true, until you come upon the only thing that is true. Ultimately true.
Yeah.
Well, inquiry, spiritual inquiry really is a process of deconstruction. And it's just as important, probably more important, to deconstruct, to find out what's not true, or who I'm not, before we can find out what I am. When I have found out thoroughly what I'm not, then the only thing left is what I am. In the end, as far as the absolute truth is concerned. So when I've thoroughly deconstructed, it's like peeling away the onion, layers on an onion, and you peel and you go, well, this belief about myself isn't true, and this one's not true, and this spiritual belief isn't true, and this isn't true, and this isn't true. And one goes through all the various layers of beliefs and ideas and ideals and all the rest. And the amazement is always when you get down to the last layer. It's like peeling an onion. When you get down to the last layer of the onion, what you realize is it was all layers. And so you don't really find sort of some core. When the last layer is peeled, then the emptiness reveals itself. The ultimate reality.
Yeah. Well, this is the sort of the neti approach.
Yeah.
however, it's like the Gyan Yoga or Yani Yoga approach is very